Hello, my name is Zeshan Ali, and I'm going to be presenting about the US airline industry. Now, talking about the airline industry, a famous quote comes to mind, and that is fly high or crash and burn. Now, we're not going to be talking about airplane crashes, but we are going to be navigating through the complex financial sectors of the US domestic airline industry. Now, you may be asking, why? What's the purpose of this after all? Can't we just pour our precious hard earned money into our business or a stock and cross our fingers, tap our heels, and hope that the customer will make us a profit or save us from disaster? Well, the airline industry is an intricate and constant evolving web of competition, diversity, and hold on, and I do apologize. Yeah, well, the airline industry is an intricate and constantly evolving web of competition, diversity, and regulation that demands a considerable capital and labor investment. This sector remains heavily swayed by external economic factors and shifting market trends. So, what seems to be the problem? Well, preventing a financial loss in the airline industry presents a challenging proposition. The BTS, or the Bureau of Transportation Services or Transportation Statistics, reported in 2019 for the airline industry about $170 billion operating revenue. Trailing fast behind it was the total operating expense at about $160 billion. This leads to a very tiny, narrow profit margin. So, by careful analysis of the data, this allows us to make a better informed, data driven decision rather than just jumping in blind and hoping for the best or finding out we really find the reason why we're at a loss. It could just be that we're making blind decisions. So, to start us off, our major players are going to be the KPIs. And we'll see the expense, revenue, passenger, operating profit, and the operating profit margin, followed by the year over year calculations. Now, I'm not going to go too in depth to the KPIs, but we'll move forward to the data dictionary. Now, it didn't always look this clean. There was a lot of extensive amount of ETL, or us data nerds, we like to call it massaging that data, right? That needed to be done both in Excel and in SQL. So we can easily import that data into Tableau and make a beautiful visualization. So talking about that visualization, I'll bring it up right there. And this is our domestic airline financial report. Now, it is a journey that spans from 1995 to 2018, or about 23 years. And this is a full interactive dashboard. And on the top shelf, you'll notice our KPIs, with our MVPs being the operating profit and the operating profit margin, and right below being the year over years with their proper indicators. Now, everything is color coordinated, including the tooltip. So we'll move to the top left chart, and this is going to be the year by revenue chart. You can see the trends are climbing over time, but you'll notice a few dips. And I won't go into the nitty gritty, but until just a little bit later on. Now, moving to the top right chart, you'll notice that we've got the four big, which is going to be the airline by revenue, and the four big data airlines, which are going to be Delta, United, American, and Southwest Airlines. Bottom left brings us up to the bubble chart, and this is going to be the revenue by the year over year revenue, and the size of the bubble is represented by the operating profit and the color schema by the OPM. Next, we have in center the pie chart, which is going to be our total expense percent breakdown. And then on the bottom right, we'll see the subtype to operating profit. Now, the subtype is dependent upon like the legacies, which are going to be Delta, United, and American. And you'll also be able to drill down into the data as well as needed. So now I'm going to push forward to a few key insights that I found in this dashboard. Then I'm going to follow it up by suggestions and recommendations based on the data and the market research. So what we're going to be taking a look at is the data from 2015 to 2018 and comparing it to the previous 3 years. So to do that, we can easily drag and drop and take a note of this 15% OPM. Now, that positive insight that we see, okay, is going to be from 2015 to 2018. There was an increase of 114% in the OPM. How do I know this is actually good? Well, in 2011 and 2014, the average OPM was only 7%. and it went up to 15%. So we know we're in the good. But what really attributed to this substantial achievement? It was several factors, including market consolidation, aka mergers, right? And also, this means that when you're reducing the competition, you also increase the demand. And when you increase the demand, you can charge higher ticketing prices. Furthermore, there was a substantial decrease of about 38% in the fuel expenditure. So in 2011 to 2014, fuel expenditure was at 31%. And from 2015 to 2018, 3 years later, we see the shift of the fuel expenditure go from 31% down to only 19%. So with higher demand and low fuel, we can see exactly that we can compound that positive effect. Now we'll move to the negative insight. So for this insight, we had to dial up the granularity a little bit and concentrate our insights towards United Airlines in 2008. So this is where United Airlines reported a $2 billion loss. Okay, so how do I know this is actually bad? Well, during the previous 2 years, which is 2006 and 2007, United Airlines was generating a healthy $1 billion in profit with a 4% OPM. But in 2008, if you remember, this is when the housing market bubble crashed and US fell into an economic disaster. Even with massive layoffs, this couldn't save United from the devastating loss it suffered. The reason, not only was there a rising cost of fuel from 27% to 33%, but there was also a decreased number of passengers flying. Why? Because money was tight during that period. So we'll move on to our final piece, which are our suggestions and our recommendations. Now, if you take a look at this picture, this collage, everything here has the ability to change and manipulate the industry. So first off is our first two recommendations. So we're going to dial back down into the data. As you can see a snapshot here, this is the 2000 and 2001 snapshot. So in year 2000, which is in this little tooltip right here, this was a very good season in the airline industry. Why? Well, it was at an all-time high of $5 billion in operating profit and only about 7% OPM. But in 2001, America suffered a devastating hit in 9/11 attack, sending the airline industry in just those last 4 months, right? September, October, November, and December into a major $7 billion loss. So many airlines were forced to ground their flights, faced increased security measures, and incurred heightened insurance costs due to their fear of further attacks. So based on the data, my recommendations is the first one, which is going to be improving security measures in tandem with enhancing crisis management protocol. So if you invest into the R&D, or research and development of improving screening technology, stricter identification requirements, and this can help enhance aviation security, along with improving the crisis preparedness, enhancing communication, and working closely with governing agencies to help ensure a coordinated response to handle the situation and can mitigate the losses during those crises. Now, this recommendation is also supported by a governing agency known as International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO. This brings us to our second recommendation, which is building a strong brand. If you notice right here, you'll notice the American and United are the biggest two companies that are hit by this unfortunate event. And the reason being was that their aircrafts were the ones that were hijacked in that unfortunate event. But despite that horrendous loss, United and American still remain as the top 4 airline companies. So this brings me to strong branding and reputation can help airlines weather the crisis by building customer loyalty and trust. This recommendation is backed by the Airline Passenger Experience Association, also known as APEX. So we'll move quickly to our third and fourth recommendation. If we go back to 2008 financial crisis, this GIF right here is highlighting the United $2 billion loss. More importantly, you'll notice the fuel expenditure moved from 27% to 33%, which was one of the major factors in this loss. And the data directly leads me to the third recommendation, which is fuel efficient aircrafts, in which airline companies should invest into fuel efficient aircrafts or alternative fuels to reduce the operating cost and improve profitability. So this is also supported by another governing agency known as International Air Transport Association. Now, as you know, with major losses, the first thing companies do is layoffs, right? And we see this throughout every instance in the data. And this brings me to my fourth and final recommendation, which is investing in employee training and retention. Classic saying is quality versus quantity, right? So upskilling an employee, AKA making them more of a quality asset and giving them proper compensation, means you can increase the quality of the labor force and decrease the overall expense. And this recommendation is also supported by Harvard Business Review on their most recent article called Why the Airline Industry Needs to Change. And that is the end. That is my story. And thank you for listening.